Greetings, brothers and sisters. Hello and welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I'm Eva Maria, your Monday hostess for this season. And this week, for Season 6, Week 12, the topic is magical beings. Now, there is a lot of ground that can be covered here because there are so many different kinds of magical beings. There is going to be no shortage of material to cover, I assure you. For my video, what I've decided to do is, rather than focus on a particular kind of magical being, I thought I would kind of introduce the topic by giving you some general thoughts or suggestions that I have in regard to magical beings as a whole. You can take them or leave them, take them with a grain of salt, but I just feel maybe these are some things that would benefit the conversation. Maybe these are things that, being said at the beginning of this discussion, it just kind of makes sense to me anyway. As always, though, if you have any questions or anything that you would like to say in regard to what I share, please don't hesitate. Do utilize the comment section below. You're always welcome to ask questions or chime into the conversation. So, with that said, there are a few things that I would suggest in regard to magical beings before you might seek to undertake any actual work with them. First, I think it's of utmost importance to understand who and what the magical beings you wish to work with are, at least to the best of your ability. I strongly suggest that you don't make any assumptions, because you know what they say about assumptions, and many times preconceived notions can lead to very bad things, or bad situations. They can lead to bad, well, I don't want to say bad necessarily, but they can lead to decisions that might not be the greatest, or actions that might not be the greatest. Assumptions are really not a good thing. And in this case in particular, I really do suggest make no assumptions. Another thing that I strongly suggest is doing some intensive research before approaching any powers. This doesn't mean like just reading one Wikipedia page and feeling like you have the gist of who or what you'll be dealing with. Instead, I suggest consulting several sources, reading several reference books and articles, maybe talking to several practitioners who've worked with the particular being or beings that you intend to work with. And I'm suggesting this because I feel that in order for you to develop a more solid foundation of information upon which you might base your approach before you do any work, you're going to kind of have to get out there and, do a little bit of seeking. Also, while I do feel that first-hand experience is more valuable and maybe a little more valid than secondhand information, I also feel that it's a good idea to at least have some idea of, what you're getting yourself into based upon several accounts, at least before you jump in. It's better kind of having something to go on than having nothing to go on. And I don't suggest flying blind, because not all magical beings are going to be friendly. Not all of them are going to be kind. Not all of them are going to be easy to work with. It may be hard to tell which ones are or aren't, more kind or more, open to interaction with humans. You know, it really depends. There's a lot. Magical beings are individuals. As I said earlier, make no assumptions. I really feel that you shouldn't fly blind here. So there are several reasons why prior research is a good idea. One such reason is that, based upon my own experience with magical beings of all sorts, I've come to understand that it's important not to disrespect or piss off entities by, for example, offering them things they don't like, or by approaching them in ways that they don't like. If you do some research beforehand, you can obviously avoid such faux pas. So the second thing that I strongly suggest is to always bear in mind that, as I said before, magical beings are individuals. And also, I would say bear in mind that while you might be able to command some under certain circumstances or in certain situations, under certain conditions, there are many that cannot and will not be commanded at all under any circumstances or conditions. Never assume that you can command something just because you are a magical practitioner. I really strongly suggest that, because sometimes it's the case, not always though. Finally, I also suggest that you don't try to play around with magical beings. By this, I'm like, by this, I mean that I don't suggest approaching them just for kicks or just to see what happens. Nixie, I'm sorry, she just came over to me. Speaking of magical beings. Oh, come on, baby girl. This is my little magical being right here. Okay, Pixie, you said hi. My Nixie Pixie. All right, that's a nickname we gave her when she was a kitten because she was so tiny. Anyway, where was I? I kind of forgot where I was. Oh, okay, so I was saying don't just assume you can command things because you're a magical practitioner. And then I moved into talking about, I don't suggest playing with entities. So yeah, by not playing with them, I mean that I don't suggest approaching them just for kicks or just to see what happens. It's one thing to work at forging a bond with something or, someone, some being. It's another to sort of metaphorically going around, poking things with a stick for your own amusement. Things will probably not go so well for you if you disrespect various entities by treating them as sources of entertainment. I don't think if you were on the receiving end of behavior like that from someone else that you would enjoy it, so I really don't recommend doing that with any sort of magical beings. Even if you are fascinated and stuff by the whole process, I try to approach it with respect, and I would try to approach magical beings that you're seeking to work with genuinely, with good reason. And I mean, good reason may vary depending on what one or the other, what one person or another, I should say, might consider good reason, but it should be for something a little more substantial than I just want to see what happens. You know what I mean? It's not, depending, I don't know, depending how you go about your approach. Playing around probably isn't a great idea. Curiosity is one thing if it's respectful curiosity. Playing around and just being a jerk and poke, poke, poke with the stick, that's not really, I don't think too many beings or people, for that matter, would like to be treated that way, so let's not. Okay, so with that said, there are many kinds of magical beings, as I said earlier. There are so many, in fact, it would be impossible, again, as I said earlier, for me to, get into specifics and start listing them because there's just too many. However, I find personally, and I could be wrong, and I welcome you to, if you feel that I'm not necessarily correct, I welcome you to respectfully, please tell me that, hey, you disagree in the comments. That's fine. Just don't come out like guns blazing, like, bitch, because I'm not your enemy, dude. No keyboard warriors, please. You can tell me you disagree with me, but keep it real. Okay, so yeah, I believe there are three general categories that magical beings tend to fall into. There may be exceptions. There may be some that are harder to pin down than others. But I feel that the three categories are as such. I feel that category 1, as I would designate it, would be deified beings, which are gods, goddesses. I guess you could kind of lump demigods in here too, because they're partial gods, so they kind of fall into the deified realm. Category 2 is undeified, yet empowered beings. These are beings that are not gods or goddesses, but are empowered and magically independent nonetheless. They're independent of like magical practitioners. They don't depend on a witch or a, some whatever one would call oneself. They're not dependent on someone to feed them per se. They exist despite us, is what I'm trying to say. Some examples of these might be, elementals, fairies, demons, angels, jinn, and etc. And then category 3, I would put thought forms here. These are beings that were created by practitioners and sometimes non-practitioners. By practitioners, obviously, I mean magical practitioners or spiritual practitioners. And so thought forms, they're beings that are largely dependent on the empowerment and direction given to them by humans. Some examples of thought forms are like servitors, egregores, tulpas, and the like. Furthermore, category 1 beings can never be commanded because they're deity. Category 2 beings might sometimes be commanded under certain circumstances and in certain conditions, but again, assume nothing. Category 3 beings can almost always be commanded, but sometimes they can rise in status to a higher category, and then things kind of get a bit sticky and tricky. Excuse me while I scroll down. Okay, because I'm looking at notes here that I made for myself. Now, speaking of beings rising in category, powers rising in category, it is possible for category 2 and 3 beings to rise into category 1 status. Some present-day deities were not always deities. They became deities over time. With enough veneration and focus from enough people, an undeified being can become deified, and a thought form can become undeified and independent, or deified. I feel that it's important to know what level a being is on before approaching it. So, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost here. So that you don't have, oh my God, let me start again on that one. I feel that it's important to have an idea of like what level a being is on before you approach it, so that you have an idea of where you stand in relation to it. Again, you don't want to get on the wrong side of something that can kick your ass 6 ways from Sunday. So I guess generally these are probably the sum total of what I would suggest bearing in mind before moving into any sort of work with spiritual beings, magical beings. But I think I've at least shared some important, some not important, but some valid things that you might want to kind of keep in your mental Rolodex. So at this point, I think I am going to wrap up the video. I apologize if it's a little bit short. I've just got a lot going on today, and this is, again, this is one of those topics that it's like either pick a niche, a little specific bit of it, or be general like I've been here. So, yeah, I guess I'm going to wish you all blessed be and ashe. And until next week, until our next exchange, you all stay awesome. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know again if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to add to this conversation. Do definitely stay tuned for the videos of all our other hosts. And, yeah, I guess that kind of sums it up. So, yeah, bye-bye for now.